Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a real paradox at the heart of Botswana's government. You see, on paper, its parliament is supposed to be the most powerful body in the country, but in practice, well, that's a whole different story.
And it all comes down to this fundamental question, really. In any democracy, who gets the final say? Is it the people's elected representatives, or is it the government that they put in power? It's all about checks and balances. And Botswana is a fascinating, almost textbook example of this tension.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. How is Botswana's government supposed to work? According to the official blueprint.
So, the foundation here is what's called a parliamentary democracy. Basically, the government, that's the president and their cabinet, isn't some totally separate thing. They actually come from parliament. The whole point of this setup is to make sure that government is always, and I mean always, answering to the folks who are elected by the people.
And the Constitution couldn't be clearer about this. It says Parliament is the top dog, the supreme authority. In theory, anyway. It gets the final say on every single law made for the peace, order, and good government of Botswana.
Okay, so if Parliament is supposed to be this supreme power, what kind of tools does it actually have in its toolbox to keep the government in check?
And it's a pretty packed toolbox, let me tell you. You've got things like question time, special committees, and, this is a big one, control over the budget. They can also pass motions, debate bills. It's a whole suite of tools designed to put every single government action under a microscope.
Let's take question time, for example. This is where any member of parliament can literally stand up and grill a government minister about, well, pretty much anything. Like this question you see here about who's getting land in the Chobe district. It's a super important tool for just forcing things out into the open.
And believe me, this stuff gets results. A question like this recently uncovered that the government spent nearly $1 million pula just on photographers for the presidency. Now, that's the kind of spending detail that would almost certainly stay buried without this kind of direct, public poking and prodding.
But let's talk about what is arguably Parliament's biggest weapon, the power of the purse. The government, the executive branch, cannot raise or spend a single dime, not one pula, without getting the green light from Parliament. On paper, this is the ultimate check on their power.
So, you look at all this, the supreme authority in the Constitution, this whole toolbox of powers, and you'd think Parliament is firmly in the driver's seat.
I mean, it seems like they hold all the cards. But here's where the paradox kicks in. When you start to peel back the layers and look at how things actually work, a totally different picture comes into focus. And it's a lot messier.
Yeah, messier might be an understatement. Just listen to a former Speaker of the National Assembly, Ray Malomo. He said flat out that the executive lords it over Parliament. He even called Parliament a rubber stamp and a doormat. I mean, wow. How do you go from supreme authority to doormat?
So what gives? How does a supposedly supreme body end up getting treated like a doormat? Well, let's dig into why the executive branch has managed to get the upper hand.
And this right here, this is really the core of the problem. You see, Parliament isn't truly an independent body. Structurally, it's run like a department inside the office of the president. Just think about that for a second. The very institution that's supposed to be the watchdog is getting its budget, its staff, its resources from the very people it's supposed to be watching. That is a massive, built-in conflict of interest.
And this table just lays it all out, plain and simple. Look at lawmaking. Intended role, supreme authority. Actual status, it mostly just says yes to bills the government has already written. What about the budget? It's supposed to control the public purse, but in reality the executive can and does find ways to get around it. And oversight, those all-important watchdog committees, a lot of them report directly to the president, not to Parliament. You can see the pattern here.
And this whole power imbalance gets even worse when you just do the math. More than half of the MPs from the ruling party are also ministers in the government. That means they're part of the executive team. So who's left to do the actual job of oversight? A really small group of backbenchers, that's MPs who aren't in the cabinet, plus the opposition. They're just completely outnumbered.
And if you want a perfect real-world example of this power dynamic, just look at what happened with Air Botswana. Back in 2007, Parliament voted and passed a motion to stop the airline from being privatized. A clear message, right? But what did the cabinet do? They just refused, said the motion wasn't legally binding. It was only when they were threatened with a lawsuit that they even bothered to reconsider. That tells you everything you need to know about who really calls the shots. And then you've got the president, who sits at the very top of this whole structure. Constitutionally, the president has this unique power to act in their own deliberate judgment. That means they don't have to take advice from anyone, not even from Parliament. It gives the head of the executive a huge amount of personal power, totally separate from the rest of the government.
Right, so when you put all these pieces together, the way Parliament is structured, the numbers game in the Assembly, these special presidential powers, you really start to see the central paradox of Botswana's government taking shape.
And what you should really take away from all this is that the problem isn't that the rules are missing. The rulebook is actually pretty good. You've got all the formal mechanisms of accountability, question time, committees, control over the budget. It's all there, written down.
But, and this is the big but, the real issue is that the whole system, the structural realities, and the day-to-day political practices, they all work to undermine those very rules. So you end up with a system that has all the trappings of checks and balances, but in reality, the scales are tipped heavily, heavily in favor of the executive.
And that leaves us with a really big, thought-provoking question, one that goes way beyond just Botswana. When a government has all the right checks and balances on paper, what does it actually take to make them real? What's the difference between just having the rules written down and having the actual power to enforce them? Think about that.